Welcome back to the O Show, everything crypto every day. On today's episode, we're going to be doing something a little bit different here. I've got Jeff. He is an attorney from Anderson Kill. How are you doing today, Jeff?
I'm great. It's a beautiful sunny day in New York, and I'm doing great.
Is it sunny in New York?
It's still a little cold, but at least it's
Okay.
sunny and not sleeting outside like usual. So
Yes. Well, I'm in beautiful Los Angeles, California, and actually is sunny here. So I'm sorry to throw some salt on, but you guys, we are going to be talking about something incredibly sexy today. Very, very sexy. And it is also known as crypto law and regulation regarding CBDCs and stablecoins. I hope you guys are prepared for this because it's just so sexy. And Jeff, before we get started on this conversation, can you guys kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and your specialty in the legal field?
sure. I really wish I'd stopped giving that intro about how sexy crypto law is. I get it all the time. It's getting a little old at this point, but I am actually a little bit new to the crypto law space specifically. I have a long background in financial markets and debt finance, working here in New York as an attorney in that space, which is even less sexy than crypto law. But I have been in the crypto space specifically as a trader and also investor and also a coach for a little while and a producer of some of my own content and media. And I'm sure we've all had that experience of you don't really know where you fit into the crypto space once you have your eyes wide open and everything looks all new and shiny. But I finally settled down here at a new job in the last few months at Anderson Kill, working for some great people that have some fantastic backgrounds in the space, whether it's regulation or helping actually with finance and people starting up new projects and also dealing with angry people at old projects and the whole slew of the board. It's been very, very exciting to kind of merge my passion with my profession. So I'm very happy to be here talking with you too.
I'm excited. I actually have, I think, one of the only crypto YouTubers that have a legal and government series on my channel. I love to interview you guys because really, you guys are kind of like experts in the space because we need to hire you to do things like I've got a whole slew of attorneys that do different things for me to help keep me safe, help me keep my audience safe, make sure we're disclosing properly, make sure that we are not doing anything crazy, make sure that we're filing our taxes correctly because even though we are in crypto and though we are and the Fed, at the same time, you do have to pay your crypto taxes. I know it's very ironic, but I'm not trying to get gaffled up and do time over not paying my taxes. Cause I mean, when we talk about blockchain technology, it's kind of all there.
Well, you sound like the ideal client because unfortunately, most people come to us when they have already made a mistake down the road. And it's really much better if you come talk to us before you try to do something and we'll help you out there. So
Yeah.
at least you're already doing that.
I do the best I can. It is kind of hard and I just send stuff. And I actually it's so funny. I called my attorney a month ago and I said, I'm having an emotional breakdown with the amount of taxes I owe. Please help me. And he said, it's okay. You're still going to have to pay them, but don't cry. It's okay. So that's me as a client. So those are the types of messages you get to me. Or I'll say, am I in trouble? And he's like, what are you talking about? What'd you do? I said, I didn't do anything. I just wanted to know. He's like, no, you're fine. So that's what you get with me. But anyways, let's kind of reel it in. I'm going to control myself, control my emotions because I am a trader as well, guys. I don't just post charts. But Jeff, can you kind of talk to us about the future of stable coins and the CBDCs, because we all know that central bank digital currencies are coming. We've heard the United States talk about these for quite some time. They were supposed to be introduced in the beginning of the panorama to help with those stimulus payments, but then again, it kind of got pushed back. And then they wanted to have post offices educate people on how to set up these Fed wallets or something ridiculous that kind of got thrown out there. But at the same time, when we're talking about CBDCs, we have stable coins that work great already that, they're not super volatile. Generally, you'll see a price fluctuation between like 98 cents, a dollar and 2 pennies, when things happen. I know Tether is a lot more regulated now. I guess we can talk about we can talk about Tether
no
too.
comment.
We can he's pleading the fifth already. But kind of talk to us about what you see happening with that in the future, because I know it's scary for a lot of people, because I don't know about you guys, but I may or may not have a lot of my capital in crypto. So
I will also not comment on that in a public space, but no, I think the concept of a CBDC, it's again, a very sexy thing to talk about in the crypto law world. But it does feel significantly further away than simply just more regulation behind a stable coin and the stable coins that are already existing. I know that there's some vibe in the space when you talk to people that maybe the stable coins that exist already, they can be heavily regulated enough that the Fed or whatever you want to, evil hat you want to put on that regulation, it can be a nice in between where, because the fear is, I think, from a government standpoint, that you have this unit of currency out there that everyone is using that is potentially unregulated. And the government will tell you that they are trying to protect consumers and protect us all from things, and those things do happen. Iron finance was a thing. Mark Cuban made sure we all were very aware of that fall, and that's what happened there. And so it does exist. Stable coins are not always stable. There are actually, three types of stable coins if you want to get a little bit into the weeds of it, because one is tied to one specific asset. It is either, tied to the dollar, which some of you might argue with me whether that's stable or not, but, or tied to gold or tied to oil futures. Or there's then a second category where you can tie it to multiple assets. And then there's the third category, which is an algorithmic stablecoin. And I went to law school, so I'm not even going to pretend to understand some of the math that goes on behind those things. So there's a lot of different definitions tied to stablecoins, and how you regulate that is very different in each category. And people don't always know what they're dealing with. So I actually think that more regulation in some ways is a good thing for the space. It'll bring in more comfort. But obviously, there's a point where you can regulate far too much. And I think a lot of the space, as you're saying, is afraid of that.
Yeah, one of the interesting things, there's a lot to unpack there. But when we're talking about regulation with stablecoins, we have stable coins utilizing different chains now. Like we have BUSD. We've got, I think Terra Luna has their own, and then of course like USDC. Like, so we have different chains, and it's like, it gets kind of confused. Like a stable coin for each particular chain is important, because as a trader, when we're taking profit, or as an investor, which you all should be taking profit, you need to not be holding with diamond hands, but that's another topic for another day. But it's important to go ahead and remove those profits at least into stable coins, and then decide kind of what you want to do with your trade. But how, like, I'm trying to formulate my question properly. What's going to happen with all those different stable coins on different chains? Like, is the US government going to step in and be like, you can't have these because we have our Fed coin? Or are they going to allow it? Like, it's a real concern for some people, because some people like to utilize, let's say, for example, maybe BUSD on Binance Smart Chain because they're getting a higher APY back or a higher return, like that type of stuff.
Sure. And I will try very hard not to be a meme of my own profession and just say it depends. But I will give you a colorful answer, but it boils down to it depends. And I really like to look at blockchain technology and the regulations behind it. That blockchain has created a Schrodinger's cat of regulation. And depending on when you're looking at a particular coin or token, or depending on why you're looking at it and what it's doing at that time, you can really categorize it into several different, or none, or just one regulation box. Sometimes it's a security, sometimes it can be a currency, sometimes it can be a commodity, sometimes it can be just a representation of membership in an ecosystem, and sometimes it can be all of those things. So, with a good example, maybe not BUSD, because I know that is a more stable coin, but an example of what I'm talking about is great is BNB, because that was originally just a way to pay fees on the Binance ecosystem. And it is now a possible unit of exchange if you're using PancakeSwap, or, or you just use it as in similar ways that Ethereum is used now, as just a scale of how well your coins are doing, because you're measuring it against BNB instead of something else. And so that wasn't even necessarily an intention of Binance when they created the coin. So some of these blockchain technologies can really take on a mind of their own. And I really do think that no single regulatory regime is going to be created in any of these single countries that are going to have all the answers that you just asked in a nice little bow for our industry to unpack. Which then leads me into, you should probably just hire a lawyer when you all have those questions. And my website is, no, I'm kidding, but it is going to be
if you'd like to get a
unpack.
colorful answer like that, you can go ahead and head over to Anderson Kill for help.
The point is that I think this will be difficult to unpack for a long time coming. I don't think there will be a pretty little bow. Here's your answer. We have regulation now. Great. I think we'll all be a little confused for a little while to come, which isn't a bad thing, because we are on the forefront of this technology, and nobody really knows what they're doing yet. It's no surprise that the government doesn't know what they're doing with us yet.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I did read an article, I forget who published it, but they were talking about India, and they were basically stating that the gentleman who is, I'm not too familiar with their politics over there. I just know everybody's got a dude leading their country for the most part, but he was saying that he can't regulate crypto on his own. He's going to need help from other countries to kind of step in, and they want to put in like a blanket over crypto regulation in that aspect, which really, if you think about it, it kind of is a good thing, but not. Like, it's got its pros and its cons, because when you're looking to do business as a crypto entity or to accept crypto as payment or anything that revolves around that, you want to have some clear guidelines, and you want to be able to know, like, can I do this or do that? And that's great. But at the same time, like, you also want to be able to use tax loopholes so that you can maybe go set up business in Puerto Rico and stay there 6 months and a day out of the year for tax implications, stuff like that. And again, you guys make sure you consult with the attorney. Don't just listen to this and go.
Yeah,
there.
we don't really love the term loophole, but continue.
But it is what it is. I was watching something and they were talking about loophole. Anyways, never mind, something else. But that was actually a very interesting concept. And it's like, I agree with that, but I don't agree with it, because then when you're incorporating an entire blanket on something for everybody, then there's not like freedoms, kind of like, I don't know. I just don't know exactly how they're going to do it. And then when we kind of talk about like utilizing a stable coin in the United States, for one purpose, and let's say over regulating USDC, because I feel like USDC is kind of the most compliant. We know FTX kind of backs it in a way. It's used heavily in the Solana ecosystem, but at the same time, I feel like the United States government isn't going to allow that. I feel like they're going to want to create something that they can control, they fully have control over. So if you want to give your thoughts on that.
I am not going to pretend to pontificate on the motivations of
plain
the
English,
federal
plain
government.
English on this show, plain English.
No, I have no idea what the government's motivations are, truly. And I know that party politics play into this a lot too. And, I've even seen, I'm sure most of us have seen that crypto has started lobbying their own, and that will play into the space as well. So again, I don't think that the blanket is coming anytime soon. I think that would be, we sort of saw something like that happen when it got kind of like slipped into the infrastructure bill, and the entire industry were like, wait, this is a massive blanket that's not going to work.
Right.
I have some faith that if they try to do that again, the same result will happen. I obviously can't predict what will happen, but I do think we will see increments of regulation rather than a massive, nothing was happening yesterday and everything's happening today.
Yeah, that makes me feel a little bit better, a little bit better, but it is
deep breaths.
Yeah, it is a scary thing to kind of think about, because we have so much money in crypto. It's kind of crazy. Like, when you think about it, like, this industry kind of just popped up in the last 13 years. We've got so much money and capital in it. It's such a cool thing. But at the same time, like, we do have regulatory bodies like the SEC that do want to protect us, but it can be argued what their best interests are. So as far as a US digital dollar, how is that going to look for the United States? Like, I mean, I know that this is the thing, and I always go back to this. I had a cousin. She was an immigrant from Sicily, from Brooklyn, And she said, you have to think of it this way. And this was many, many years ago. I think I was 18 or 19. She said, she said, we're very lucky to be in the United States for whatever. But she said, she's like, one of the things I like to think about is the United States has really never been overthrown. We haven't gone through a lot of turmoil that other countries, like other civilizations have gone through, like Egypt and Rome and places in Africa, like all these different places. So when we're looking at the United States, we really haven't been invaded. We really haven't been like overthrown, like I'm talking about to an extent that we see in other countries for the most part. So, and we also haven't had our monetary policy really change too dramatically, considering, because countries like Cuba or countries like Venezuela, they literally, their stuff, it's wild. But I'm just trying to think how the US digital dollar integration is going to look.
I really wish I had a better answer. But I will say that a lot of people will probably argue against your point there to say that when we moved away from gold, that was a financial overhaul, because then you truly have just paper money out there and not backed by anything. You could argue that the transition to digital is not that dissimilar from that. And you could also argue that we are already in a digital economy. The actual printing of dollars, that term doesn't really mean much. The dollars just become created. And I think that's similar to what would happen here. The digital, they would adopt a lot of the technology that we are using, the things that would make cross-border transactions significantly simpler. That type of ease of use would come into the space of an actual federal currency, which, if I am, have my own stable coin out there and I'm hoping everybody uses that, that's terrible news for me. If I'm just a person who would like to see the financial system run smoother for all of us, that's probably not bad news. So it kind of depends on the lens that you have when you're looking at a government-backed coin. I do think, as a moment in blockchain technology history, it will be huge regardless of the effects, because the instant legitimacy of a government has started to issue a digital currency would be phenomenal, in my opinion. What happens after that, once the kind of dust settles from that, who knows? Depends a lot on the regime and the infrastructure that's in place when it does actually roll out. But it would definitely be a huge turning point in just blockchain technology in general.
I agree with you on that aspect. And one of the reasons why I agree is because once everything is on a public ledger, a lot of us are not going to have our privacy anymore. So that's a major, major factor. Another interesting thing, it's going to be curious to see if United States officials are going to allow us to track their spending, because we all know how government, well, if you don't know how government contractors work, I'll fill you in here. So what they do is they get a grant, they get money for something that they are going to raise taxes for, because we raise taxes in California all the time, especially Los Angeles County. This money doesn't really go where it's supposed to go. They say it does. So they basically get a grant, it goes to hire a contractor. These contractors that do work for the government charge 3 to 5 times more than a small contractor or small local business or any other contractor, because they have prevailing wage. So I'd be very interested to see how much money is spent for our roads to build our freeways. If you've been on the 10 freeway, they've been working on that thing for God knows how long. But it'd be interesting to actually be able to track and see where our money is going. Why are they spending why are they spending $6 million instead of $1 million? So they're going to be subject to lose their privacy too. We're going to be able to track everything for them. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they're going to manage that, because then once that information is like, because I know you can go and actually find that information, but it's very hard because it's very buried by things. But at the same time, that information will just be available like on something like Etherscan, something very simple to see. So I'm like very like, how are they going to manage to still hide their spending and what they're doing with a stable coin or with a CBDC?
I think we're getting into we should, have a glass of wine and talk about this, because this is a very interesting theoretical conversation, but there might be a compromise here between that, get us out, screw this whole system, Bitcoiner, maxi sensation that we're all familiar with. And
don't get me started. I had something happen today, but anyways, go ahead.
But maybe there's a compromise there, because, let's use the federal digital dollar and you get to track where your actual taxes are being spent, which I'm sure nobody in that camp would be opposed to. but you'd be having to use the federal ledger. I don't know. And again, this is definitely not something that has a simple answer for a short YouTube video, but an interesting concept nonetheless.
I love it. Okay. One last thing.
Sure.
What's happening when US digital, when the CBDC comes in, what's going to happen with Tether? What's going to happen with USDC? Are they going to say, get out of here? Or are they going to allow everything to coexist? Because let's face it, there's a lot of money in Tether and USDC. And also too, for example, most people in the United States don't necessarily use Tether, but they do use USDC, but there's people in other countries that use Tether. So that would greatly impact how we interact with other protocols, other platforms and other things on a global scale.
So my personal opinion, just, as somebody who's consuming a lot of the same media that you are, is that I think more than likely they will continue to coexist. And I wouldn't actually be surprised if the federal arm that gets appointed with putting these things into place don't utilize some of the infrastructure and systems that somebody like Tether and somebody like Circle with USDC has already done. Why reinvent the wheel when there's already these massive systems out there that are able to do it? You're actually seeing something similar with Circle pairing up with people like Visa, because they're saying, okay, you guys have been doing this for decades now. Let's not try and, compete with each other, and let's try and synergize our resources, if you will. And I think the government you would hope would be smart enough to try and do something similar to that.
Well, I do wear a tinfoil hat at times, and I just understand. I understand ego. I understand emotions. I understand the need for power and control. And to me, thinking about that, I just don't see how the United States government is going to let somebody else come in and do their job or have control over their currency. That's just my personal opinion. I can be 100% off here. I don't know. But Jeff, thank you so much for coming on. Do you want to share your book with everybody? Because I feel like it might be important for those of the audience members who are very into incredibly sexy things like stable coins,
Yes.
legal opinions, and monetary policy in the world.
Sure. No, I'd be happy to. It just got published a couple of weeks ago, so it's still pretty new. Came out as a bestseller in the technology education space, which is pretty exciting. But I was a legal contributor to a book, Stablecoin Evolution. I wrote the chapter on regulation, which was nice. This is a nice test in the public space for me to prove that I actually know what I'm talking about. I hope I passed. But yeah, it's available on Amazon in a paperback form. And if you are interested in stablecoins, which I personally think is an exciting area, check it out.
Awesome. Jeff, thank you so much for coming on and giving us some free alpha, because again, you guys, attorneys are very expensive, but you do need to pay them for things. It's a lot more affordable to pay for an attorney's time to get help with something than to screw up and then have to pay them again to fix it. It's going to cost double or triple. And I think Jeff can attribute to that, or you can agree with me on that.
Yes, absolutely. And it's actually cheaper if you hire us after the fact when you hired us before, because now we already know all the details and everything. So it's really streamlines the process.
Awesome. Jeff, thank you so much for coming on. I will also have Jeff's links and stuff below, just in case you may have a legal question for him, or you want to reach the folks over at Anderson Kill. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you for having me.